All right, hello again. In this section, we're going to be discussing the topic of circles. So this is in your book, section 6, part 4, page 465, and it talks about circles. The first thing you need to know about a circle is that the area of a circle is pi r squared, of course knowing that this is the radius r. And the circumference of a circle, circumference means the distance you cover if you go around on the circle. This is called circumference, or another word for it is perimeter. The circumference or the perimeter of a circle is 2 pi r. Now, a definition that you need to know is a chord. What is a chord? A chord is a line segment that connects 2 points on the circle. So if these points are DE, then DE is a chord. If this is center O, and this is a point on the circle C, then OC is not a chord, because O is not on the circle. O is the center of the circle. Let us take a diameter. This is diameter. Let's call it AB. So AB is the diameter. And the diameter, sometimes we refer to it as D, the diameter is twice the radius, 2 times the radius. Now, AB, it is a diameter, but it is also a chord. Why is it a chord? Because it connects 2 points that are on the circle. And by the way, the diameter is the longest chord. The longest chord that you can draw in a circle is the diameter. Sometimes they might ask us to find the chord length. So they would give us a circle and they would have a chord and they would ask, what is the chord length? What they need to give us in this case is that they need to give us this perpendicular distance from the center to the chord, and they need to give us also the radius. So let's say they say that the radius is 5 and that this perpendicular distance is 3. Then what is the chord length? What you need to know is that when you draw a perpendicular distance from the center to a chord, this will intersect or cut the chord in its midpoint, which means that this part equals this part. These two parts are equal. So here we can apply Pythagorean theorem and discover that this half of the chord is 4. You either do it by remembering the 3, 4, 5 special right triangle, or if you forgot this one, then you can say that 5 squared equals 3 squared plus x squared, Pythagorean theorem, and you can find out that your x is 4. So now my chord length would be twice the half that I just discovered, 2 times 4, which is 8. Now, some books, they try to show you that the chord length is twice the square root of r squared minus t squared. R squared, r is the radius and t is this perpendicular distance. Well, this is the same as Pythagorean theorem. So really it's the same thing. You don't need to memorize this, but what you need to know is how to do what we just did. So if you feel better memorizing this, go ahead and do it, but in reality you don't need it. All what you need is to understand what we did here, and this would be enough. Another thing they might ask you about in a circle is called the arc length. Now it's important to make sure that you know the difference between a chord and an arc. Let's say this is point A and this is point B. Now remember, chord means the straight distance or straight line segment from A to B. An arc, it is the distance between A and B, or arc length is the distance between A and B following the circle, going on the circle. This is what we call an arc. So an arc is not straight, okay? It follows the circle. How do you calculate the arc length? Let's say they tell us that this central angle is 80 degrees, and we're given that the radius is 3. The method that you need to memorize is the following. Arc length divided by the circumference, and remember what we said about circumference. Circumference or perimeter is the same as 2 pi r, pi 2 times pi times the radius. This equals the central angle divided by 360 degrees. This is important for you to memorize. It's very important. If you check in your book, there's an example in your book, page 466, and it asks if the radius is 3 and the central angle is 120, what is the chord length? So simply you use this, the arc length that you're looking for, it's unknown. The circumference is 2 pi r. The central angle, it's given to me here as 120 divided by 360. So x equals 2 pi times 3 times 120 divided by 360. This would give me 3. Then the 3 cancels out with the 3, and the answer is 2 pi. Now, if you need to, you can use pi as 3.14, which would give you an arc length of 6.28. But many times we see the answer left in terms of pi, so you don't need to change pi to 3.14. Another thing that you need to know in a circle is called a sector. And sometimes in English they call sector, another word for sector is pizza slice. So what's a sector? A sector is part of the area, part of this disk. This, what you see highlighted in red, is your sector. And what you might be asked for is sector area. What is the sector area? You need to follow something that is very similar to chord length, very similar to chord length. and it is sector area divided by circle area equals the central angle divided by 360 degrees. Also make sure to memorize this. It is important, it is needed. And remember that circle area is pi r squared. If we go to the example in your book, page 468, they ask for the sector area and they tell us that the radius is 3 and the central angle is 120 degrees. Now of course we're gonna follow this. Sector area is unknown to me. The circle area is pi r squared. Central angle it's given to be 120 degrees and divided by 360 degrees. So x equals pi r squared, 120 divided by 360, 0, 0, this cancels out to give me a 3, and 3 cancels out with one of the 3's here, and the answer would be 3 pi. So make sure you remember this. Now, we know that y equals ax plus b would give you a straight line. And we know that y, or as you know, we can also call it a function of x, equals ax squared plus bx plus c. This would give me a parabola that opens upwards or downwards based on the sine of a. The same thing here for the straight line. It might be going down again based on the sine of a. Anyway, so what is the equation that would give me a circle when I draw it? What is the equation? The equation is the following. X minus a squared plus y minus b squared equals r squared. This is the general form or the standard form of the equation of a circle. So if you draw it, it would give you, or graph it, it would give you a circle. The center of the circle is at point AB, so the coordinates are A and B. These are the coordinates of the center. And the radius equals to r, or the radius length equals to r. So it's important to memorize this, this, and this. These are important. Let's do one example about this. Let's say we are given the following. X minus 2 squared plus y plus 5 squared equals 9. Let's say that this is given. And what we need to do, we need to graph this equation. So because you remember x minus a squared plus y minus b squared equals r squared, remember you need to have this memorized. Because you have it memorized, you can do some matching. Minus a is minus 2. This means that your a is 2. And negative b is 5. This means that your b is negative 5. And you already know that the center is at coordinates AB, which means 2, negative 5. And radius squared r squared is 9, which means that your radius is 3. Now, if you want to graph this, the center is at coordinates 2 and -5, so this is your center, and your radius is 3. So because your radius is 3, you have to go 1, 2, 3 points to the 3 units to the right, 1, 2, 3, 3 units to the left, 3 units up, and 3 units down. These points are on your circle, because remember, this is what the radius does, right? Each point, or every point on the circle, have the same distance from the center. And now you can draw your circle like this. So make sure that you remember this form of the equation of a circle, because you need to know it. Now, what you might see in the test is that they would give you one equation with 4 graphs, and you need to choose the right graph, or the other way around. They would give you one graph with 4 equations, and you need to choose which matches what. All right, so this is why it is important to know this equation. Let's do one more example. Let's say that the given equation is as follows: x squared plus y squared equals 16. And again, the question is either graph or find the correct graph, same thing. So because you have this memorized, x minus a squared plus y minus b squared equals r squared. And now you need to do some matching. So this needs to match with this. This would mean that your a is 0, simply because x minus 0 squared is the same as x squared. And let's also match here. Y squared needs to be y minus b squared. Again, for the same reason, this would give you that b is 0. And r squared is 16, so your radius is 4. So this means that the center is at 0, 0, which is the origin of the Cartesian coordinate system of the x and y axes. So this is the center of the circle, and the radius is 4, so you have to go 4 units to the right, 4 units to the left, 4 units up, 4 units down, and your circle would look something like this. So again, we're discussing how to find the correct graph if you're given the equation, or how to find the correct equation if you're given the graph. Now, sometimes something that's a little bit tricky is that they could give you the equation of a circle in the general form, not in the center radius form that we were just seeing. So, for example, they could tell you the following: x squared plus y squared minus 4x minus 10y plus 20 equals 0. Let's say the question is, where is the center? Or let's say the question is, what's the length of the radius? Or let's say the question is, find the correct graph. Or let's say the question is, rewrite this in the form x minus a squared plus y minus b squared equals r squared, which we're calling the center radius form. Okay, we're calling this form that we learned a few slides ago, we're calling it the center radius form. So they could ask you to rewrite this in this form. So how would you be able to answer this, or this, or this, or this? There must be a method to follow to go from the general form to the center radius form. Now, we're going to see one method. A common method that is used is called completing the square. I'm not sure if you've seen this or if you've done it at school. Maybe you have, which is good. If you have, if not, it's not a problem. This method, the nice thing about it is that there's really nothing to memorize. You just have to go through several steps. Now, I'm going to postpone this and discuss it at the end. First, I will introduce a shorter method. And the good thing about this shorter method is that there's nothing to memorize. The good thing about this method is that you don't have to go through several steps, but there are things that you need to memorize. So the steps or the things that you need to memorize are as follows. X squared minus 2ax plus y squared minus 2by plus c equals to 0. This needs to be memorized. Why do we need to memorize? Because we need to match the given equation. Let's say the given equation is x squared plus y squared plus 6x minus 4y minus 3 equals to 0. And they ask you one of the questions that we already indicated. What is the center? What is the radius? Graph it. Write it in the form, the center radius form, x minus a squared plus y minus b squared, and so on. So what do you do? What you need to do is you need to match the given equation to this that you should have memorized. Now I remind you, if you don't like to memorize these things, there's another method which we're going to see in a little while, which is called completing the square. But for now we're covering this method. In this method you have to memorize a few things and you would reach your answer quickly. In the other method, which is completing the square, the good thing about it is that you don't have to memorize anything, but you have to go through a few steps. So the first thing you need to do, as I said here, is to match. So minus 2ax is the same as plus 6x. So now we're matching, or we're identifying. Minus 2ax is the same as 6x. This would give you that your a is negative 3. Let's do some more matching. Minus 2by is the same as minus 4y. Minus 2by is the same as minus 4y. This means that my b is 2. All right, so in addition to memorizing this, you need to memorize that the center is at coordinates AB, which means here that your center is at coordinates negative 3 and 2. Now you also need to memorize that the radius, or the length of the radius, equals a squared plus b squared minus c, all under the square root. So this is 9 plus 4. Now what is c? Plus c is negative 3. This means that your c is negative 3. So we go back to this. Minus c in this case would be plus 3. 9 plus 4, 13. 13 plus 3, 16. So the square root of 16 is 4. So now I found the center, I found the radius, what I can do now is I can rewrite this given equation in the general form. I can rewrite it in the center radius form of the equation of a circle. And as we know it, it's x minus a squared plus y minus b squared equals r squared. X, my a is minus 3, so this is plus 3. Y minus b, my b is 2. And the radius is 4 equals 16. So we've already answered where is the center, what is the radius, what is the center radius form of the equation of the circle. What we still have to do is to draw it. So the center is at minus 3 and 2. Minus 3 and 2, so this is the center. The radius is 4, so you go 1, 2, 3, 4 units to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4 units down. 1, 2, 3, 4 units to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4 units up. And then you connect these points and your circle would look something like this. And here we were able to answer the fourth possible question. So, as I said, the good thing about this method is that it might be a little bit shorter than completing the square. What's not very nice about it is that you have to do some memorizing. As we said, this needs to be memorized, and this also needs to be memorized. Now, if you don't like this method and you know completing the square, or you prefer completing the square, we're going to do that in a little while. And it's up to you to choose any of the two methods that you like. Whichever one you prefer, just go ahead and do it. This brings us to the end of this section. And in this section you have homework, page 470, numbers 5, 6, 9, and 10. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go through the method that is completing the square. In order to do what? In order to go from the general form of the equation of a circle to the center radius form of the equation of a circle. So that's what we're going to do next. So the method that we're discussing now, it is called completing the square. And as we said, this is to help you go from the general form of the equation of a circle to the standard form. And we already said the reasons why you would need to do this. Now I would like to remind you that you don't have to know this method. If you're happy with the second method, which we already discussed a while ago, a few slides ago, if you're happy with the second method, you can use the second method. But to those of you who would not like to memorize a few things in the second method, I have this method for you in case you would like to use it. So, assume that you're given this equation and they ask you one of the four usual questions. Where is the center? What's the length of the radius? Which graph corresponds to the which correct graph corresponds to this equation? Or simply write it in the center radius form. Okay, when we say standard form, we mean the same as the standard radius form. So they can ask you any of these four questions, as we said. So this method is called completing the square. It has a few steps. Let's go through them one by one. Step 1 says isolate the constant on the right side. As you can see here, this is the constant, so you need to take the constant to the right side. So you would have 2x squared plus 2y squared plus 12x minus 8y equals to 6. So we took the constant to the right side. The second step says group the x's together. So 2x squared, you bring the 12x next to it, and you group the y's together, plus 2y squared minus 8y equals 6. So here I have the x's together and the y's together. Let's go to step 3, 2x squared plus 12x, 2x squared plus 12x plus 2y squared minus 8y equals 6 minus 8y equals to 6. If you find that I made a calculation mistake or a copying mistake, please make sure to tell me. So what does step 3 say? Whatever is multiplied on the squared terms, divide it off from every term. All right, so as you can see here, whatever is multiplied on the squared terms, we have 2 multiplied here and 2 multiplied here, so we want to get rid of it. This is why they're saying divide it off. So you divide everything by 2. This would give us x squared plus 6x plus y squared minus 4y equals to 3. And this is it for step 3, because for step 3 we care to have x squared without a coefficient and y squared without a coefficient. Step 4 says make space inside your groupings. Okay, what does this mean? This means that you have here x squared plus 6x. They want you to leave some space. Y squared minus 4y. They also want you to leave some space here, equals to 3. So basically this step is very silly. It just says leave space here and leave space here. That's it. X squared plus 6x, x squared plus 6x, y squared minus 4y, y squared minus 4y equals to 3. Let us do step 5. It says you take the x term coefficient. So this is the coefficient of x squared. We don't want that. We want the coefficient of x. It says take the x term coefficient and divide it by 2. So we have 6, and they're asking us to divide by 2 because 6 is my x term coefficient. 6 is the coefficient of x. You divide by 2, you would get 3. Then it says square the result. So the result that you got, which is 3, you square it. This gives you 9. And it says add this to both sides of the equation. So the result 9 that you got, you add it here. And of course you add it here, because you can't add to one side of the equation. You have to add to both sides of the equation. Then it says do the same with y. What does it mean to do the same with y? The same steps that you did here for x, you have to do with y. So you take the y coefficient. What's the y coefficient? Minus 4. Divide it by 2. This would give you negative 2. Square the result. Negative 2 squared is 4. Add to both sides of the equation. So you add 4 here, and as we said, in order to keep the equation or the equality true, you have to add to both sides of the equation. So now we have x squared plus 6x plus 9 plus y squared minus 4y plus 4 equals to 16. Let's go to step 6. Step 6 says convert the left side to squared form and simplify the right side. Let's copy it. X squared 6x 9, x squared plus 6x plus 9, y squared minus 4y plus 4 y squared minus 4y plus 4 equals to 16. Let's double check. Yes, it is correct. So this step says convert the left side to square form. As you can see here, this is a remarkable identity, right? This is in the form of a squared plus 2ab plus b squared, right? If we go back to here, look, when we divided by 2 we got 3. So this is what we're looking for. We're looking for writing this in the form of a plus b squared, and to us, in our case here, this is x plus 3 squared. And I remind you, we got the 3 from here. This is where we got the 3 from. And when we do it for y, we're gonna get the minus 2. Now you're gonna see that. So again, we need to convert this to squared form. So this would be y. What is it? Go back and check. It's this. It's what you... It is the result of dividing the y term coefficient by 2, which gives you minus 2. So this is y minus 2 squared. And simplify the right side. Simply the right side, you want to write it as r squared, right? So instead of writing 16, you write 4 squared. So this equals 4 squared. And this is it. Following these 6 steps, we were able to go from the general form to the center radius form, also called the standard form. So this could be one of the questions. Write it in the center radius form, which we're done with. They could ask me, where is the center? So the center simply is 3 and negative 2, because you already know the general form of the center radius form. What is the radius? The radius is 4, because on the right hand side I have 4 squared, right? And don't forget that one of the questions could also be to match the given equation, the given general form of the equation, to a graph, to one of the given graphs. So it's as if you need to know how to graph it. So let's go first to the center. The center, oh wait, I made a mistake in the center. See? Because I did not do a proper method of identification. The general form is x minus a squared plus y minus b squared equals r squared, which means minus a is plus 3. Minus a equals plus 3, so a is negative 3. And minus b is minus 2. Minus b equals minus 2. This means that b equals 2. So the center is minus 3, 2. So I had made a mistake here because I did not match the equation to the form, the center radius form that I already know. So now let me locate my center, negative 3 and 2. So this is the center. And the radius is 4. So I need to go up 1, 2, 3, 4 units. Go to the right 1, 2, 3, 4 units. Go to the left 1, 2, 3, 4 units. Go down 1, 2, 3, 4 units. And my circle would look something like this. So as I said, this method is called completing the square. If you found it to be long or complicated or many steps, you can go back to the previous method that we explained a few slides ago. But if you prefer not to memorize what you needed to memorize in the previous method, The good thing about this method, completing the square, is that you don't really have to memorize anything. You just have to go through these 6 logical steps. And this brings us to the end of this section. And remember that I already gave you homework on this section a few slides ago.